Hello, everyone. Excellencies, honored delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to those of you here in person. And I also want to welcome and say thank you to those that join us online. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the EU and UNIDIR event on the role of extra-regional states in the Middle East Weapon of Mass Destruction-Free Zone. UNIDIR initiated the Middle East Weapon of Mass Destruction-Free Zone project in 2019. It will not be understatement to say that the Middle East have changed significantly since 2019 and still change today as we speak. I would also want, and our project is actually aimed to account for those developments, both the concerns of weapon of mass destruction proliferation that exist before, possession, development, and use, as well as the new ones that right now are happening in the region, and account to all of those. And the publication that we will present you today, the main analysis and finding, try to account to that exactly. It is also important to me to acknowledge the challenging time and ongoing suffering in the region, and we understand and acknowledge the severity of the situation. We hope that this project can contribute, even in a small manner and modest way, to building bridges and fostering a safer and more peaceful Middle East. The paper that we'll present today is one of the project's latest products that aim to do just that. It's based on a gap in policy and research that our team identified, and while there are already 5 established nuclear weapon-free zones, very little has been written on their protocol, let alone what it means for the Middle East. Also, very little has been discussed so far in the region, in the Middle East weapon of mass destruction-free zone context, in the current process as well as previous process, what the zone protocol may contain and how they ensure the P5 adoptions of the protocol. In fact, only in the last sessions, that has become a topic for discussion. So the discussion just started. So we're really hopeful to be able to inform the discussions in the zone conference as well as in other areas that looking on those issues. And I'm looking really forward sharing with you today the main finding and analysis of that publication. I should also note from the outset that the event is being live streamed on the online UN TV and is recorded. Online participants could send us questions, and I received already a few of them to our emails, Middle East Weapon of Mass Destruction Free Zone -unidir@un.org. I know it's some may not caught it, so it's also appear on our UNIDIR event website webpage. But before we move to our esteemed panelists, I'm delighted to give the floor to opening remarks for Ambassador Stephan Klement, the EU Special Envoy for Non-proliferation and Disarmament, that has been a true partner to UNIDIR in general and to the Middle East Weapon of Mass Destruction-Free Zone in particular. Stephan, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon to everyone here and online. It's a great pleasure, of course, to have this event organized by UNIDIR, which we have been substantiating for years now. And I think it's very relevant because, as you know, the EU's objectives are very much top priorities in the area of disarmament and non-proliferation. And of course, also we know very well that the regional angle, the EU being a regional organization, the regional angle is a very relevant one. And of course, the Middle East, being very close geographically to the EU, is a particular area of priority. And I do not have to reiterate and repeat the overall introduction Ken has been giving about the tragic situation we face there at the moment. But of course, we look here at this angle from weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems. And I think it is also, if you look from the other direction, addressing kind of these issues on a regional basis, the spread of WMD has also, of course, an impact to strengthen the global norms against chemical weapons, nuclear weapons, and biological weapons. And of course, as you know, the EU is an institution built on multilateralism, on basically bringing countries together, and this is something, of course, we would also like to, translate or even give some incentives to Middle Eastern countries. This is why we have since some years now invested into this project. We are not, in a sense, seeing that the WMD-free zone is, imminent, but I think it's very relevant to keep the knowledge, to carry out analysis, to develop some kind of options, some scenarios, and UNIDIR has been a fantastic partner in doing so. And I think, of course, this is a very complex task to reach this ultimate objective of the zone. And I think in the past few years, together with UNIDIR, we've been able to develop some kind of, I would call it, products which may help future generation, in particular the young generation in the Middle East, to address this issue and to work on certain concepts. And I can only maybe give 2 or 3 examples. One of the very important online tools of this project is the so-called Compass. It outlines really the position of regional states on various components and aspects of the future zone treaty, and it provides regional states and those countries basically which support the process with a very fantastic tool to seek for information, to look for correlations, and also maybe identify gaps of what has not yet been done. And then, of course, recently we have also had a paper exploring how artificial intelligence could be used to influence regional proliferation, and I think we have artificial intelligence nowadays everywhere in a positive way, but also in the way of additional concerns and risks. And then, of course, we will have this upcoming report which will examine the effects of ongoing regional crises, and there are plenty, as Ken pointed out in the beginning, and how this could act on the one hand as a motivation, and the other one as kind of an obstacle to pursue the project. I think this is particularly relevant at this juncture. So I look very much forward. I spoke too long already. It's more for the participants to give us their views. And of course, many thanks for being here with us, for UNIDIR, and for all the panelists. I'm really very happy to have such an impressive panel here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephan, for the partnerships of the EU with the project. With that, let me turn to our very esteemed panelists. And I will introduce them in the order of speaking. We'll have first Sarah Ruth Topsky. Sarah Ruth is a research assistant with the Middle East Weapon of Mass Destruction Free Zone project, and she will present today the paper main analysis and finding. The floor is yours, Sarah Ruth.
Thank you, Chen. Your Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, it is my pleasure to be here today. My presentation will focus on some of UNIDIR's key results of an ongoing research conducted by Chen and myself on the role of extra-regional states in the Middle East WMD-Free Zone. The Middle East WMD-Free Zone includes several of its own unique elements, whether due to the nature of the region or the scope of the zone. Nevertheless, there are some trends and lessons learned by the established nuclear weapon-free zones vis-à-vis additional protocols to keep in mind. These are especially relevant in order to better avoid lack of ratification or ratification with substantial reservations in the establishment of the Middle East zone. I'll outline 3 underlying issues nuclear weapon-free zones have faced. The first is a bit more comprehensive, so I'll start with that one. It concerns how to define the zone of application, where the treaty and its protocols are applicable, and how to address disputed sovereignty over certain territories. Zone of application is the geographical area where the treaty establishing the nuclear weapon-free zone applies its obligations and prohibitions. As such, the zone of application is usually the sum of the territories of each regional state and may extend beyond them. Some existing nuclear weapon-free zones have defined a zone by listing state parties, while others have used maps or coordinates. And these choices have had significant implications to the status of ratifications. Negotiators of the Middle East WMD-Free Zone will have to determine its geographical scope. Despite a lack of an agreed definition of the Middle East and various UN delineations, the current working assumption is that a future zone would include members of the League of Arab States, Iran, and Israel. This has been adopted by discussions on the establishment of the zone over the past 3 decades. Notably, these are also the member states that are invited to participate in the ongoing New York conference. As for the zone of application, it is safe to assume that, at a minimum, it will include the land and territorial seas of member states. Regional states will have to decide whether the zone of application should go further, and if so, which provisions will extend beyond. The inclusion of marine areas beyond the territorial seas in the zone of application has often led to reservations or non-ratification by nuclear weapon states. And this is an issue I will discuss in more detail later on in the presentation. While inclusion should enhance the Middle East zone scope, it risks alienating nuclear weapon states, particularly given the region's strategic waterways, such as the Suez Canal, Bab el-Mandab, and the Strait of Hormuz. In addition, Extra-regional states also have stakes in the definition of the zone of application when it comes to certain territories. This can be where extra-regional states control territories within the zone's defined geographical boundaries, or where a sovereignty dispute exists between an extra-regional and regional state. Another circumstance arises when a regional and an extra-regional state control the same territory within the zone, de jure or and de facto. While additional protocols are traditionally asked of the P5 to adopt, there are also those relevant to other states with territorial claims in the defined region. Regional states will have to determine how to address these types of territories within the treaty. Established nuclear weapon-free zones sometimes included disclaimers regarding disputed sovereignty over certain territories, or excluded it altogether from the zone to secure nuclear weapon states' participation. The region hosts numerous nuclear weapon states and other extra-regional states' military bases. The presence of military bases and the activities of nuclear weapon states in the Middle East could impact the effectiveness of the zone. At the same time, bilateral agreements between states in the region and nuclear weapon states related to basing, access, and overflights may need to be taken into consideration in the negotiations and implementation of the treaty. Negotiators will have to discuss from whom to request protocol commitments, whether the existing arrangements can coexist with zone prohibitions, whether to allow host states to regulate these via bilateral agreements, or whether these arrangements require renegotiation. These options also have possible implications on the commitments nuclear weapon states provide vis-à-vis negative security assurances. This leads me to the second big issue concerning the additional protocols, namely negative security assurances, NSAs. Nuclear weapon states' provision of these assurances is critical to zone's credibility by providing assurances against nuclear threats and use. Reservations by nuclear weapon states limiting their NSAs has spanned over several issues. These include by reference to the right for self-defense, regional states' alliances with other nuclear states, disputed sovereignty over certain territories, as well as treaty breaches by states parties of the Zone Treaty or the NPT. Regional states will have to balance between calls for unconditional NSAs and nuclear weapon states' policies on these. In addition, notably, the Middle East zone would be the first to cover also chemical and biological weapons, and not just nuclear. The Biological Weapons Convention and Chemical Weapons Convention prohibit these weapons altogether, but they do not have universal membership. This scenario opens several questions for Middle Eastern negotiators to consider. The third area in which there are reservations relates to maritime issues. Nuclear weapon states' concerns have been primarily related to the possible limitations zones could impose on rights of passage and transport. These rights are enshrined predominantly in the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. The convention represents a complex regulatory regime that balances the sovereign rights of coastal states with the freedoms that maritime states enjoy. It established 3 clusters for ocean space, namely the territorial sea, the economic exclusive zone, and the high seas. Depending on the nuclear weapon-free zone, regional states have placed various limitations in some or all of these clusters. UNCLOS does not allow a state to completely block the passage of vessels, even where these are nuclear warships or nuclear powered ships seeking to pass through a state's territorial seas. Although there are certain requirements regarding the manner of transit in territorial waters, a state cannot prevent or impair the right of innocent passage. Coastal states are also prohibited from discriminating against states or cargoes from different nations. In other words, limitations apply to the manner of these ships rather than the vessel's characteristics. The Middle East, beyond its key strategic location, also for the nuclear weapon states, includes some of the most significant waterways and international straits for global commerce. The region's strategic waterways, like the Persian Gulf, Suez Canal, and straits such as Hormuz and Bab el-Mandab, amplify maritime considerations. Some coastal Middle Eastern states have their own national laws regarding transport in their waters and straits, and some are also not members to UNCLOS. In addition, some states have national laws that require pre-notification or pre-authorization of transit passage through international straits, a concept that some nuclear weapon states consider contradicting UNCLOS's freedom of navigation. The Middle East zone negotiators would have to carefully consider how to balance between these various issues. As outlined at the outset of my presentation, there are many questions for regional states to deliberate and negotiate. Our paper divulges much further into these, as well as other elements for Middle Eastern negotiators to consider, and draws upon the experiences of established nuclear weapon-free zones. Success will rely on creative diplomacy, building consensus among various regional actors, and involves nuclear weapon states in a manner that aligns with their strategic interests and equally so with the zone's goals. To that effect, regional states will have to determine how and when to engage with nuclear weapon states concerning the treaty protocols and provisions. While some of these open questions may seem like issues to address only in the far future, the experiences of other zones suggest that the earlier nuclear weapon states are engaged with negotiations on the additional protocols, the higher the likelihood of ratification and less reservations. There's an opportunity to do so in the ongoing New York conference, with all P5 states invited to participate. This in turn would serve to effectively implement the Middle East WMD-Free Zone and bear its full benefits as a regional non-proliferation and security mechanism. That's all from me for now. Thank you for your attention. Back to you, Jan.
Thank you, Sarah Ruth. Moving to our other panelists, we will start from those colleagues from the region. It is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Mahmoud Hamdi, who is the Director of Disarmament and Peaceful Uses Department at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Egypt. The floor is yours, Mahmoud.
Thank you very much, Jan. It's a privilege to be here among this distinguished panelists. Of course, I would like to thank you and to thank UNIDIR for this important study and for organizing this event, and of course for your kind invitations to share a few thoughts on this issue. My thanks also go to the EU for their continued support to UNIDIR activities on Middle East free zones, which highly contribute to filling in research gaps, drawing on lessons learned from previous experiences throughout the 5 existing free zones, while also developing new ideas and proposals. The amount of work UNIDIR is undertaking with the support of the EU is gaining, from our perspective, a particular importance given the current situation where maybe other foundations and countries have other financing priorities when it comes to the disarmament and non-proliferation agenda. Thank you very much, the audience, for your time, sacrificing the lunch break to attend this event as well. The project, this studies comes within a series of studies that have been launched and released since 2019. You know, the UNIDIR project since 2019, which was just launched before the adoption of the decision that convened the UN conference on the establishment of the zone in the Middle East. The project's output and activities up till the last year have been very, very relevant in terms of providing diplomats, practitioners, insiders, all stakeholders engaged in the process of establishing the zone with a full breadth of history and very pertinent insights into the dynamics and rationales that underline the various positions and how they were evolved over time. I have, of course, to add to Stephan recalling the useful online interactive tools that were developed throughout this project, of course, including the compass, but not only the compass. I also found very useful the tool on the timeline, the document depository. They are quite useful in understanding and helping us, not just the young generations, by the way, even the insiders, even myself, would help us in get a better understanding of the nuances and positions between different parties and to reflect on them in a comparable manner. The study we are discussing, or the research we are discussing today, as well as other UNIDIR studies that were issued and released this year, including the one on the AI and the threat perspective, the threat perception. From my perspective, I think they now focus more on identifying and filling new research gaps after laying out the groundwork for to get a better understanding on the historical background that govern the work on the establishment of free zones, whether in the Middle East or elsewhere. Now, my reading is that the focus of the new studies is more on identifying new research gaps and how to develop new ideas and perspective that, in my opinion, are quite relevant in responding to some of the questions that we pose now at the UN conference. And hence, we think that they can be of real value in feeding into the
conference actual deliberation as we are moving progressively towards addressing the core issues related to the establishment of the desired zone in the Middle East, from all aspects, conceptual, technical, and political. I remember that we have invited the UNIDIR before, with the kind support, of course, of the UK, of the EU, to establish more linkage between the research conducted by the UN Institute and the topics discussed at the conference. And I can say that the focus of the study today comes as a very opportune response to this call. For example, the study places an important emphasis on the nuclear security assurances and the role and responsibility of nuclear weapon states in this regard. This can never be more timely, as the topic of nuclear security assurances will be one of the main 3 thematic issues proposed by the Moroccan presidency to be at the center of discussions during the current session of the conference. And I'm sure the study, once released, will provide very important insights into these discussions. In some aspects of the study, I could not find myself in full agreement with some of their conceptual foundations or conclusions. In particular, when it comes to certain aspects that would suggest that the features and characteristics of the envisaged Middle East zone is too unique, to the extent that we have to invent a new disarmament and non-proliferation toolbox. But even if some of these aspects were not quite compelling from our point of view, it's still very relevant, very important, in order for us to follow how new ideas and proposals can be developed from even diverse points of views. At the end, the study and the project as a whole since 2019 continues to provide an additional platform for in-depth discussion that brings together various stakeholders from the region and even beyond, including representatives from think tanks and academia. We encourage all ideas and views, even if they are opposing views, to be put forward. Some of the audience might be even surprised that despite the absence of Israel in the UN conference, the other 23 participants are not always in full agreement. And this is not just confined between Iran from one side and the Arab states from the other side. Even amongst the Arab states, there are nuances in positions, how we see the nexus between security and disarmament and arms control. So it is important to feed into these discussions, to enrich it with more research work. The UN conference is an endeavor that is worthy of all possible support we can get, not just from all invitees, from its invitees, whose participation is key, of course, but also from a research perspective, as we delve now into the real work of substance. The idea is to get a better understanding of the various components of the zone and the general provisions and obligations of the envisaged treaty establishing it, without getting at this stage at any drafting exercise. If you follow the actual discussions and deliberations within the conference and how they evolve and move forward towards substance, you can see that it is a kind of a genuine effort that aims to achieve the joint objective agreed by consensus to establish the zone. The constructive engagement and the valuable contribution that we receive from observers participating, including, of course, from the UK, as well as from China, France, and Russia, as well as other observers, organizations like the IEA, the OPCW, and the support unit of the BWC. The potential role of UNIDIR and other think tanks and academia is equally relevant from our point of view. The conference has agreed on an indicative, non-exhaustive list of thematic issues relevant to the establishment of the zone, which can lay the solid foundation for future discussions at the conference on good substantive basis. I encourage the UNIDIR to use this index as a reference in their future research and activities in the region, so that they continue to provide us with more insights, more scientific insights, more analytical concepts that would help enrich the discussions that we will have throughout the conference in the upcoming years. Finally, I have to commend your efforts, the research work, and I look forward to its continuation with the kind support of the EU. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mahmoud. And I do want also to mention and thank you for the partnership that the ministry as a whole and you, Mahmoud, and your predecessors have been helping UNIDIR to understand the position, to understand the process, and really to try to help as much as possible to the Middle East in general, the zone in particular, and the conference to be as efficient and as productive as possible. So thank you. And with that, I'm very pleased to introduce our next speaker. Mr. Salim Yousfi is the counselor at the permanent mission of Morocco to UN headquarters. And as many of you know, and as was mentioned, Morocco serves as the president of the Middle East Weapons of Mass Destruction Free Zone Conference. And we will be delighted to hear from Mr. Yousfi both about what has been done until the presidency and during your presidency. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chen. So, allow me at the outset to thank UNIDIR and the European Union for convening this timely and very important side event. I have the honor today to speak on behalf of Ambassador Omar Hilal, the chair of the 6th session of the conference to establish a free zone of nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us today due to other urgent engagements. When we speak about the Moroccan presidency of the Conference on the Middle East, when we started earlier this year, we had as a main objective to preserve the longevity and dynamisms of the conference through diplomacy, through dialogue, and also through mutual trust. When we also sat and started gathering our ideas and our thoughts, we aimed and we wanted to make it as an assembly of inclusivity, transparency, and consensus in order to attain a balanced and objective results for the benefit of all. Also, when we presented the timeline of our presidency earlier this year, it consisted of an inaugural meeting where we presented our roadmap to members of the conference. We convened a second working committee of the conference during last March, and I will shortly brief about it. With the assistance of the UNODA, we are currently preparing for the third working committee of the conference, and it's the first time that a working committee of the conference will be held outside of New York, because we are convened in Amman in Jordan, following the gracious invitation of the Brotherly Kingdom of Jordan. We hope to make from this third and upcoming working committee a milestone meeting in order to keep our goal and to keep our pursuit toward a Middle East free zone of nuclear weapons. We continue also exploring with members of the conference the opportunity of submitting a joint contribution for the comprehensive study on nuclear weapon-free zones. We are still gathering our thoughts on this matter. We believe that also we have a solid framework and accumulated sufficient background from the discussions that we had before in the discussion in the conference in order to present to this study a balanced and insightful contribution. We intend also to convene in upcoming October 2025 a series of informal consultations within members of the conference just to review the organizational and logistical aspects of the 6th conference. And then we will hand the presidency of the conference during next November to the Brotherly Sultanate of Oman as the chair of the 7th session. When we engaged in a series of discussions with members of the conference, we felt that there is an urgency, or if I may, necessity, to focus our discussions during this year on three thematic topics, which are negative security assurances in free zones and their implications for the Middle East. The second topic that we have chosen is mechanism for clarification, consultation, and cooperation, 3C, and dispute settlement. And the third one, which is cooperation between existing nuclear weapon-free zones and the future Middle East free zone. And this topic is going to be discussed during the next working committee to be held in Amman. Regarding the first topic of NSAs, when we started our presidency, we felt that the conference hadn't conducted in-depth discussions on this matter. However, we had several members of the conference that consistently emphasized the need for legally binding commitments from nuclear weapon states not to use or threaten to use nuclear weapons against members of the zone. When it comes to the second topic, which is the clarification, consultation, cooperation, 3C, and dispute settlement, we firmly believe that these components are essential to ensuring the effectiveness of any future free zone. So, establishing transparent dialogue, incorporating diverse perspectives, and developing peaceful dispute resolutions mechanisms will be crucial for fostering mutual trust among members of the conference. During the second working committee held last March, we discussed the two topics, the NSAs and the 3C and dispute settlement. So from my humble assessment and understanding of what we had as discussions during this working committee, I can say that most of speakers advocated for unconditional NSAs from nuclear weapon states through ratification of relevant protocols to the future zone treaty without reservations. And also we had one perspective that suggested expanding NSA's provisions to include all nuclear weapons possessing states. Regarding the discussions on 3C and dispute settlement, we had a series of presentations from eminent panelists from international organizations, from think tanks, from members inside and outside the zone, that also highlighted provisions and practices within existing weapons of mass destruction, multilateral instruments, and nuclear weapon-free zones. And these presentations were followed by interactive discussions within members of the conference. So concerning the third topic regarding cooperation between existing nuclear weapon-free zones and the Middle East free zone, we intend to keep our consideration and our examination of ways to reinforcing collaboration through the sharing of best practices between these zones, boosting knowledge exchange and capacity building for effective participation in disarmament forums, and also we hope that we will be able to develop a clear understanding of mutual benefits, maintaining steady efforts toward the establishment of the future zone. And as you have witnessed earlier this morning during the general debate, the conference was able to deliver its third joint statement within the NPT PrepCom, which in our humble view represents a significant milestone and shows that the conference can still forge common ground on critical matters regarding disarmament and non-proliferation. Also, in the continuity of the Moroccan presidency's efforts to preserve the dynamism and longevity of the conference, we will convene a side event on the sidelines of the NPT PrepCom on the 5th of May under the theme Advancing the Middle East, Nuclear Weapon-Free Zone, Challenges and Opportunities on the Path to Consensus. We aim through this side event to brief the NPT states parties on the progress that we have achieved within the conference since its inception. We will assess also the current state of discussions of the Middle East Free Zone within the NPT framework and beyond. We hope that we will be able to establish a robust foundation for decisive advocacy support of the Middle East Free Zone during the drafting of the final document of the NPT RevCon in 2026. And we will present also in very divisive and in very broad way the roadmap of the Moroccan presidency of the Sixth Conference on the Middle East. And also, we will try to establish through this side event a platform of exchanging views and revitalizing efforts, fostering constructive dialogue, and identifying practical steps toward the establishment of this free zone. And I will conclude by sharing one message to all the NPT member states. I would say that the Middle East Free Zone aligns with the broader objectives of the treaty. So by supporting this initiative, the NPT states parties, they reaffirm their commitment to nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, as well as they boost achieving the universality of the treaty itself. Under Moroccan presidency of the Sixth Conference, we are committed to building upon this solid foundation of progress. Our steadfast aims to advance this vital process closer to its noble aspiration, which is a Middle East exempt of nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction. And I thank you.
Thank you, Salim. And now it's my honor to introduce our last speaker, Ms. Rebecca Sager, Deputy Director for Defense and Security at the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office at the UK. Please, Rebecca.
Thank you so much. Yes, as you've said, I'm Rebecca Sager. I'm Deputy Director for Defence and International Security at the Foreign Office and also head of the UK's Centre for Counter-Proliferation and Arms Control, which is actually a joint government unit made up of officials from our Foreign Office, our Defence Department and our Energy Ministry. And I'm really pleased to be here today. Thank you to UNIDIR and to the EU first for hosting this important event, and of course to UNIDIR in particular for their really informative and thought-provoking report on the role of extra-regional states in the Middle East WMD-Free Zone, based on really thorough research as well, looking at that role in nuclear weapons-free zones across the board. Such research provides a valuable set of issues for further discussion and we hope can make a useful contribution to the debate. A few words, if I may, on the UK's approach. We are resolute in our support for the principle and practice of nuclear weapons-free zones. These zones are a successful tool of non-proliferation, and at a time of deteriorating global international security, they make an even more vital contribution to enhance both regional and international security. As UNIDIR's report really clearly demonstrates, existing nuclear weapons-free zones also provide a strong foundation and lessons for the creation of further zones, hopefully to accelerate progress on global disarmament when the security environment allows. I was particularly pleased to see this firsthand during a recent visit to Opinal HQ and to see the really impressive work that Opinal are doing to build capacity to share lessons with other regional WMD-free zones or nuclear weapons-free zones, and the education programs and workshops that Opinal are spearheading in particular can make a real difference, I think, to ensuring the effectiveness of zones around the world, and I pay real tribute to them for taking that initiative. The UK takes our responsibility as a nuclear weapons state really seriously. We have signed and ratified all nuclear weapons-free zones that are open for signature, giving legally binding negative security assurances to more than 100 countries in Africa, Latin America and the Caribbean, Central Asia and in the South Pacific. We're also keen to make progress on being able to sign and ratify the additional protocol to the Bangkok Treaty, and will continue to engage and work with ASEAN members to make this possible. As a co-sponsor of the 1995 resolution, the UK also recognises its responsibilities and remains fully committed to the creation of a zone free of all weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems in the Middle East. Such a zone would not only support global non-proliferation and disarmament efforts, but would also make a crucial impact to improve regional security and stability in the Middle East, in our view. We're pleased to have attended all Middle East WMD-Free Zone conferences as an observer and pay tribute to the excellent report that my Moroccan colleague has just presented, including on their plans for the year. and we support a constructive approach to drive forward progress. To make such progress, all states of the region must feel able to participate meaningfully across the broad agenda, and so this process must be inclusive and reflect the interests of all countries of the region, and really, again, also value the presentation just given by our Egyptian colleague, who sets out their intention in that regard so clearly too. It's in the same vein of inclusivity and consent that we continue to champion the principles and guidelines set out by the UNDC in 1999, that the creation of new zones must be established based on arrangements freely arrived at among the states of the region. As a path towards the creation of a zone free of WMD in the Middle East, as others have said, this is different from nuclear weapons-free zones in that it is a WMD-free zone. We strongly advocate for the universalisation of the NPT, the Chemical Weapons Convention, the Biological and Toxic Weapons Convention, and the IAEA's additional protocol, and hope that all states in the region who have not yet done so, will sign and ratify them at the earliest opportunity. Those steps alone won't bring about a Middle East WMD-free zone, and ensuring resolution of questions relating to WMD proliferation in the region will also be important, from Iran's nuclear program to Syria's Assad legacy chemical weapons program. There are opportunities to, again, drive that broader progress. So to conclude, we absolutely remain committed to working with partners both inside and outside of the region towards making the progress necessary to establish a zone free of weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East, and indeed to supporting other nuclear weapons-free zones around the world too. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. And now I'm pleased to open the session for Q&As. We will take questions from our audience as well as from our online audience that sent already some questions. So with that, I will start with a question. So first, Sarah Ruth, what was most surprising to you in the report?
Thank you, Chen. I think also, as we saw in this panel, while NSAs is quite the predominant issue, there are also other issues that need to be addressed for the additional protocols to get ratified. And just to kind of also address a few of the points that our esteemed panel raised, we mentioned that maybe the Middle East zone might be too unique, and we're suggesting something new. And I think also to reflect what Salim said, is that there are also other zones. We really draw upon the experiences of other zones to see those similarities, and each region has its own unique characteristics. So, for example, if one state in the Middle East suggested to expand the NSAs for also nuclear-armed states, in theory, the Treaty of Tlatelolco is open in that sense. Also, just to note, Treaty Tlatelolco was concluded before the NPT, so it is open to nuclear-armed states. So those are just a few elements. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mahmoud, I have a question for you from actually an Egyptian colleague. Let me pull it out. Egypt's approach to the new weapon of mass destruction free zone vis-a-vis the Israeli approach has been consistent in that the former continues to advocate for a zone first, peace second. Do you think, given the complex web of conflicts in the region at the moment, that a different approach may be considered? What are Egypt's views of the potential revival of the JCPOA? Do you see a viable role for the EU in the establishment of the Middle East weapon of mass destruction free zone? And do the Middle Eastern countries want to see EU involvement as there have been in the JCPOA? And maybe, Stephan, you might want to comment on that as well. But Mahmoud, please.
Many questions. I tried to just write them down all, but as a prima facie response, I just want to highlight here maybe the nexus between security and disarmament, which I guess is an important factor in the line of thinking that many of the insiders to the UN conference and the process are taking. From my point of view, I just want to highlight here that many would suggest that they need to provide an enabling security environment first before you start to have a serious discussion on non-proliferation and disarmament issues. Myself, I think that we should work on the two topics in parallel. They are quite interdependent. And this is the essence of the resolution of 1995, which clearly says that, or highlighted the interdependence nature of both security and disarmament or non-proliferation related issues. They are not in any way mutually exclusive. So we think that the conference, and it was even mentioned in the previous outcomes of the 5 sessions, the political declarations, and the other 5 sessions, there was a clear reference to security issues and security topics. And that's why we think that the conference provides a very important platform for everyone, for all stakeholders, for all participants to come and participate and lay out all their concerns so that we are able to address them in open and inclusive manner as much as we can. Of course, the revival of the GCPOA, the conclusion of negotiations between Iran and all the relevant stakeholders that do not stop short at the US or the EU or the E3+3. Also the region shall be there, shall be on board. I think a revival of the agreement that would take into consideration the concerns of all the relevant stakeholders, including in the region, would, of course, would give a great impetus to the work of the conference and would help, I guess, provide a much better enabling environment to have more successful and conclusive discussions at the conference. Of course, we have all our support to the work of all the negotiators, the US and the EU and the E3+3. We always try to interact and engage constructively and directly with them. And we think that, of course, reaching a peaceful solution to this important cause would be the best course of action and would avoid the region lots of implications that would make the security landscape even worse. I'm not sure whether I answered all the questions, but I
think the role of the EU.
Oh, yes, of course. The EU is playing a very, very important role by financing this event and this research. The EU is, with all its member states, they have been always a staunch advocate for the zone. We call upon them even to be even more proactive in speaking with the main participants or the main invitees which do not participate in the conference. I guess I'm sure that Stephan and all the EU members have their own non-proliferation and disarmament engagement and dialogue with both the US and Israel, and stressing the importance and the objectivity of the conference, how it is a kind of a genuine and inclusive effort without any intent to point fingers, would provide all stakeholders with a very good and opportune opportunity to discuss all concerns. So maybe, of course, the EU, during the several discussions they're having with the main stakeholders, they can also play a role in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephan, would you like to say anything? And just to mention, given Stephan, your important and major role within the JCPOA, if you can comment a little bit about how you see the relationship between the JCPOA and the zone.
I mean, first of all, thank you, and a very, very interesting question, of course. I would say, first of all, only to echo what Mahmoud has been saying, the EU, of course, has an interest, and this is why, of course, we have been contributing to these efforts on the zone, on the political way, but also financing projects. But the overall interest of the EU is, of course, security, stability, and trade, with this very important, neighborhood area which we face here. And I think here is also the answer a bit, if you look only exclusively at the security angle, I think there has to be some cooperative element, and this is often not so much visible in many of the zones. In the JCPOA, if you look at Annex 3, which had some cooperative component, I think this is the way to work on. In the end, the EU is an element, or is an institution which has been built on peace through cooperation, through economic development. And I think this is something in a certain way without preaching. We want to export also to this region, and we can contribute. To your more specific question on the JCPOA and the zone, obviously, if you look at the JCPOA, and I will not get into this discussion, can it be revived or not, but conceptually the JCPOA is very much alive if we follow discussions today. What is maybe could be more strongly accentuated here, also make reference to Ahmud again, the region has to be more responsibilized in this context, in the sense that there should be more incentives also coming from the region for some solution. And this is again through cooperation. This is not only, how to say, economic cooperation, but this could be cooperation in areas of nuclear safety, security, all these areas which become very relevant in a region which is the Middle East now, where we see the development of nuclear energy emerging. And I think this is the way to go. So in summing up, it should be a more cooperative, the cooperative nature, and this does not have only to be limited to nuclear. We have a much broader context. Could be high-tech, chemical, biological industry, and other things. And this, by cooperating, there will also confidence will be created. And this again can help the conference and can help the establishment of the zone. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think just to echo on what Salim is saying is that actually I think by bringing some of the working groups as well as other meetings related to the conference to the region, give a little bit more agency to the region and really take a more responsibility on some ways as part of the process. So I think that's as part of it, but I don't know if either of you have more to say about the topics and the questions.
So what I can say about this is that in the working committees, we try to have a very open and very inclusive discussion regarding the topics that we've agreed upon. So we can't go beyond what we have agreed upon in the beginning. But when I checked the study that you have distributed today, since it's officially launched today, we will share it with members of the conference and see, how we could discuss it broadly and see if there are some things that could be adaptable to our discussions within the working committee. That's all what I had to say regarding this aspect.
And just to clarify, the report itself will not be actually launched today. We are still collecting some comments, so it will be launched shortly, but not yet. Another question that I have from our online audience is about the delineation of the zone. Should Turkey be included in the zone given its broader borders to other Middle Eastern states, considering its base for nuclear weapons that could shape political considerations? Please, Mahmoud.
Thank you very much. Of course, yes, I understand that there is no yet a final definition on the boundaries of the zone. But we shall not reinvent the wheel. And we already have certain decisions or certain studies that have been conducted by the IE, which suggest that the zone would consist of the 22 Arab states, Israel and Iran, trying to reopen this issue might, I guess, add a new layer of complexities that might not be quite helpful in our discussions. The Turkey has a very special situation as a NATO member. Including it into the zone might get the job even more sophisticated and add more barriers to the discussion we are having. So I think the best course of action is to keep the agreement that we have since 1989, since the studies that were conducted by the agency. It's just the 22 Arab states as well as Israel and Iran. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahmoud. If I understand, the representative from China, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. My name is Chen from Chinese delegation. And first of all, I would like to thank all the panelists for their presentation about these very important issues. And today, to be honest, I don't have any questions. I just would like to elaborate our general position on this issue. The Middle East zone free of nuclear weapons, once established, will help prevent the proliferation of nuclear weapons, extension in the Middle East, and enhance peace and security in the region and the world. China has always firmly supported the international efforts to establish Middle East zone free of nuclear weapons and all other weapons of mass destruction, and constructively participated in, as an observer, all the sessions of the conference on the establishment of WMD-Free Zone in Middle East from 2019. In March 2021, our Foreign Minister, His Excellency, Mr. Wang Yi, visited the Middle East. He put forward the 5-point initiative on achieving security and stability in the Middle East. As one of the important pillars of the initiative, China calls on the international community to support the efforts of regional countries to establish a Middle East zone free of nuclear weapons and all other weapons of mass destruction. In February 2023, the Chinese government issued the Global Security Initiative concept paper, which listed implement the 5-point proposal on realizing peace and stability in the Middle East, including advocating mutual respect, upholding equity and justice, realizing non-proliferation, jointly fostering collective security, and accelerating development cooperation so as to jointly establish a new security framework in the Middle East as a key direction of our cooperation. China calls upon the relevant nuclear weapon states and countries in the region to fulfill their responsibilities, respond to the legitimate request of the Arab countries, and actively participate in the above-mentioned conference process. China will continue to actively participate in the relevant process, including the 6th conference on the establishment of WMD-Free Zone in Middle East under the Morocco's presidency, and contribute to the early establishment of such WMD-Free Zone in the Middle East. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from our audience? Okay. Yeah, please. Secretary General of OPNL.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm Flavio Bonzanini, Secretary General of OPNL, and I'd like to thank you for the wonderful presentations and great work carried out by UNIDIR, the European Union, and all relevant actors to produce this research. I'd like to thank also Dr. Rebecca Sager for her kind words about OPNL activities. I would also like to thank the Moroccan presidency and UNODA for extending an invitation to the 2nd committee of the conference to be held in the upcoming days in Amman. OPNL will be represented, and we will be more than happy to share our views and experience to support this process. We will read with interest your research when available, and we offer the support of OPNL to your activities. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I think we just saw yet another demonstration how the various nuclear weapon-free zones can help each other and feed each other and communicate in order to enhance those capacities within the various regions. So with that, let me please join me in thanking our panelists. And if you're interested, we have some of our publication, or at least a sample of our publication ahead here in the front table. So please help yourself. Thank you.